Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to dive into data and analytics that matter. So, data and metrics that matter. What I'm thinking here is that these guys are both in-house SEOs and they're really, really good at what they do. I'm an agency guy, and what I want to do is set the table a little bit in terms of the kind of things we look for in an agency and how to set up all the campaigns we do for success, because what we inherit sometimes are unsuccessful sort of campaigns. What we want to do is we want to manage against that. These guys will dive into metrics and ideas and thoughts. I'm going to go high level and think planning, but there's still going to be some rubber meets the road stuff in terms of how to look at data, and I want to share perspectives. Because if you look at data today, you might think, hey, that's a great trend, love it, I'm going to report it to the boss. Well, you take it over to the boss, what does the boss do, right? So I'm going to get into some of that. I'm going to jump in here, quick introduction of me. I'm Steve Krull, CEO and co-founder of BeFoundOnline. We're a boutique Chicago search agency. We like to think we're pretty good at what we do. We like it better when our customers think we're pretty good at what we do. So I'm going to share some of that. So quick agenda here, the metric we all share. As I looked at the conference and I thought about the people that were going to be in the audience, I said, if I'm going to come up with metrics for you guys, am I going to come up with talking about universal analytics where 90% of us can't implement universal analytics today? So I thought to myself, why would I do that? Then I arrived at the one metric we all share, and it's pretty straightforward and pretty simple, and I'll get to it in a minute. And then big data, small bites. Earlier today, heard about big data, and I also heard about break it down and understand it, because even though we've all got a ton of big data, how much of that data are we using and how well becomes the question. Planning outcomes. This is where I want to talk about setting yourself up for success. This is where it works. Then sort of the show me the money slide, because if I'm talking about setting up the success, we all want to be able to count something, and usually we want to count money. So we're going to get into that. Then there's a fun part, audience participation. We'll have a little fun and games there just for a little bit. Alrighty, let's go ahead and dive in. All right, what matters most to all of us is moolah, simoleons, the green stuff, the gold stuff, right? This is the metric we all share. At the end of the day, do you launch campaigns without thinking about how much money you're going to make? I mean, we all do it. What I don't see on the content side and SEO side, as much as I see on a paid side or a display side, is people thinking in terms of ROI. And the good news is, I've heard a ton of it today. Think ROI, look at your money, look at those things. We all want, and this is the one metric we can share, every one of our campaigns should talk to money. If we're not talking to money, we're fooling ourselves. Why wouldn't we talk to money? Our bosses talk to money all the time. We budget in our organizations. I go through, even for a small company, I go through a budget cycle at the end of every year, try to figure out how much I'm going to spend, and I figure out how much I'm going to make. We got to do that with our campaigns. We got to do it at every level of our digital business. So then, if I think about big data and how I can plan to make money, this big data thing, who's got an average of 5 data sources out there that you collect information from? Yeah, who's got more than 5? Yeah, dozens of data sources, right? Sometimes the reports are easy to get to, sometimes they're not. So a great study that was recently released by Lyris tells me that 45% of marketing executives lack the capacity to put the data to work. So why do we have all the data if our bosses can't put the data to work? And then beyond that, only 24% of these same people surveyed take action based on what they see. They don't find the action in this stuff. And then if you think about it, the analogy here that fits, and one of the guys back at the office wrote this for me, is that looking at your data is like going to the grocery store. And I add to this, when you're hungry, you go to the grocery store, but you only need 3 or 4 things, and you end up with a shopping cart like this. So the data you need here is probably the ice cream and a few other things, but you end up with all this other stuff. So you sift through all of this data and all of this mess to try and make sense of something, and you usually do it at the end of the campaign. And here's where we're going to shift perspective a little bit, because I can start a campaign tomorrow if I've got keywords selected and I've got my details, I've got my content army ready to go, and we're going to go to work, or we're going to do some SEO, some categories of the website. I'm ready to go. What's the last thing I do? The last thing I ever do is create a baseline report. We just don't do it, right? So what we do at BFO is we plan outcomes. Every campaign, every client, we do an outcome analysis. When we sit down with you and you want to say, hey, Steve, let's take the left side of our website, for example, and let's go optimize that. Great, Bob, let's get started. Here's what we want to do. We want to understand the outcomes, because if we plan the outcomes, the outputs become pretty obvious, right? So planning outcomes, we do a quick discovery for just this campaign, and we talk about goals, we talk about challenges, we talk about metrics, and we talk about impacts. The launch piece of this is pretty easy. But notice we're setting up the KPIs to begin with, and then before we launch the campaign, we're pulling a baseline. I want a before and after snapshot of this bad boy. So I want to set it up at the beginning. And then if I go to tracking outputs, the other thing that we do, and I recommend you guys take a look at, is that we do a baseline comparison. And what I found is that in the days before we set a baseline and then ran a 3 or 6 month report, if we had KPIs defined, we changed them anyway, and we didn't care about the data we thought we wanted to begin with. So it's one of those, if we grab that baseline, we've got our KPIs set, they're there. I can go grab my new data, I can compare to my baseline, I can check my goals as I have them, but you know what I'm gonna do as well? I'm gonna challenge those stinking KPIs that I said at the beginning. I mean, I learned so much when a campaign launches. I've got a 6-month content marketing campaign, right? And then really I've got probably 6 months or more to count it at the end of that, right? So we're really talking about 12 months, but you want to measure along the way. But the idea is that you want to challenge your initial thoughts. You want to challenge your assumptions. You want to count the money at the end of the day. You want to know that if you're investing $30,000 or $50,000 in this significant content campaign or this significant taxonomy reorg on the website, show me the money. Where is it? Go find it all the time in these reports. Easier to talk to the boss, easier to pull reports. Because if you go 6 months out and pull a report, you're starting at the top of the pile of data, and you got to sift through it. If you've got your KPIs and you've got a baseline, boom, that bad boy's there. Boss asked for it, throw it at him. Thank you very much for stopping by, boss. Then let the boss ask questions. Because if you do it the other way around, 6 months into this, you're going to end up spending an hour with the boss, talking about the campaign, reminding the boss how the campaign was built and structured, and then you're going to talk about the data a little bit, and then you're going to get the first piece of data, questions, second piece of data, questions, third piece of data, questions. How many of us go through that on a semi-regular basis? Yeah. Well, I find, and we found, that setting expectations up front and managing that perspective, great way to keep everything in check. The other thing to think about here, and we keep hearing it, but we talk to organizations all the time that don't necessarily look at and challenge the status quo of their thinking. We have a content campaign we launched. Well, we're going to use the same conversion rate as our direct traffic. What? Or we're going to use the same conversion rate as our organic search. Well, organic search is a better spot to start for a content campaign, but reality check, people, an article is not a product page, right? It's not a lead form. Now, if you're designing your content campaign well, with all the hooks that people have talked about today, you're going to end up with calls to action on that page. You're going to end up with related materials, and you'll have a conversion rate. But I'd argue you need to be soft on that. You need to lower it. It can't be your site average. It's not going to be your site average. And for those of you that meet or exceed your site averages with your content conversion rate, badass, keep it up. But it usually doesn't happen. So think about where the different channels apply and what kind of conversion. Are they assist or are they a conversion? And use that perspective in setting up your data. Because if you use that perspective, then you're talking to the boss in January and saying, hey, you know what? This is content. I expect some assisted clicks and conversions. I expect a 1.5% conversion rate, where my direct traffic or my organic or my brand traffic is usually the highest, right? So I don't want to expect this. So I set expectations for the boss, because if I bring that report to him at the end of 6 months, he goes, why is this conversion rate awful? It's not. It's actually pretty darn good. It's content, dude. So that's the kind of thing. So it's figuring that stuff out. So the transition here from figuring that stuff out is that every one of these campaigns, in perspective, needs to find some money. And then these are the questions you're going to get. If you've got the baseline data, you can dive into the next question, because every question that our clients ask and every question that the boss asks leads to more questions and more questions and more questions. And what we find, we've got data paralysis. We pull different data sources. We build dashboards in BrightEdge, right, to show the clients. And we do custom exports, right, screenshots, and send them, and PDFs, and all these wonderful things. And then the boss asks for more data. We turn it into a spreadsheet. And then you put more columns in the spreadsheet. Oh, can we see it this way? Can you slice it that way? Can you do these things? You can, absolutely. But you still haven't answered a question. And you still haven't been able to take action. So if you have the baseline, you understand your campaign, you can take action, you can make changes. So all these questions sort of come up. It says, why are conversion rates down? Well, here's the campaign, here's what it looks like. What changed and when? And what we do when we build these baselines and we build our campaign setups, we roll all that stuff together, and what we try to do is keep a comprehensive list. And you can put it in a marketing database, you can put it in Excel spreadsheets, you can put it in PDFs, just put it in a folder somewhere that collects the information from all of your campaigns in one spot. That way, if you've got a change management log for your website, you can say, hey, in February, we did or didn't change anything, and that conversion rate still went down. So now you have clues. Instead, how many people go to the IT department and try to figure out when website changes really went live, right? Do it all the time, right? Customers are like, I don't know what changed. Our conversion rate's been off for 6 months. We're not looking at it then. We're not looking at it often enough. And if you've got baselines and you're sharing this stuff with the C-suite or management teams, your baseline should have that stuff in there. And it comes down to having site health and well-being checks in there too, right? What's our indexation on Google look like? What does the rest of this stuff look like? Pick that stuff up. Figure it out. When you launch a content campaign, you should do there's some great stuff in Bright Edge, and the stuff they launched today is going to rock. So we're going to do some quick Q&A. Okay, I need some help, John. Somebody in the audience, which is the Mississippi River? Is it A, the picture on the left, B, the picture on the right, neither of these images, or both of these images? Anybody? Anybody? Absolutely. Both is correct. Who gave me the answer? 17 people? Give her a teddy. And this is a perspective check, right? This is the Mississippi headwaters, and those are my 2 kids playing in water. This is last week, northern Minnesota. Man, I got off the grid. It was awesome. And this is the Mississippi as we all sort of know and love it. But set perspectives and set expectations with bosses and folks and make sense of this, right? That's the first perspective check. So, second perspective check. Can I get a volunteer to answer this question? Is the time on site increase here good or bad? That guy over there. Could be either. Absolutely. It's either because if here in August I added a bunch of content to my site and my user engagement goes through the roof, yay us, right? That's good news. If, to the contrary, I reorganized a bunch of my product categories and my time on site went up, I just ticked off a bunch of my users. And that's not good. But that's why we set these KPIs up front. That's why we manage it. Teddy for that man, please. Oh no, hurting somebody. Last question about keywords. How are these keywords doing? And I'll warn you, this is kind of a setup, but it's okay. I need another volunteer. Back there, that young lady in the middle. What's the answer to this question? How are these keywords doing? Awesome, not sure, could be better. I'll give you a hint. But here's the deal. I know this because we kind of set up the campaign and we didn't set up any other goals for the client. The goal here was, hey, let's get a ton of page 1 keywords on these terms, and yay, we did it. But what we should do and what we're trying to do is work through that data to say, you know, what's next? We got this really simple metric in place, but what else are we pulling? What are those landing pages doing, and how are people converting on those things? So when you're setting up your data and setting up your campaigns, make sure you plan your perspectives up front. Make sure you set expectations. Make sure the man or woman upstairs or next door or wherever they happen to sit, the company, the boss, the agency, whoever it is that you're talking to, understands where you're coming from on this stuff. Summarize your data. Don't send a spreadsheet and say, oh, look at this and call me. No, you got to summarize this stuff. Pull out bullet points and do that stuff. If you've got a baseline for your campaign, you're going to be in great shape because you start with something. If you start with something, it's easier to finish with something. And then you can dive deeper. And it actually saves time and money. I guarantee it. So that's kind of the end of what I've got. Summary and roadmap. As I said, the roadmap is specifically absent from this. But fix your analytics. I didn't talk about it, but the conversion rate example in there, if we talk about conversion rates being down, there's a pretty good percentage of the time when we find conversion rate dips that tracking got messed up. Traffic got mixed up. Something is double firing, something is not firing. Whatever platform you use, go in and dig for it. You'll see the signs. Or bring somebody aboard to go find the signs for you, because it's out there, especially if you don't have any other way to explain something like that. Plan to profit. Ready, fire, aim might work sometimes. I've seen it work. I've done it. We all have to do it sometimes, right? The boss says I need this done Tuesday, so you go. But ready, aim, fire works a lot better and more often. Your metrics matter, as does your perspective. I think we beat this one up enough. It's the idea that make sure you set that, make sure you understand it, make sure it's there. And then finally, I said this too, is aggregate information. Pull that data together, pull the materials together. Share it internally on your team. If you want to come up with a beautiful dashboard or one-page summary to show the boss, there are great examples all over the place for this. I'm happy to share them as well. Where you roll your campaigns together, you roll the information together. The other thing that I didn't touch on here is if you're planning out your marketing for the next 3 or 6 months, we put content marketing in a silo, we put SEO in a silo, we put paid search in a silo, and heaven forbid we have any traditional media going on, because that's on the other side of the world sometimes. Well, why don't we have a campaign flighting calendar that says, content marketing, I'm targeting these things for the next 3 months. I want my specific keyword groups in my sets. I want the definition there. I want it tied in. I want any SEO work that's going on planned out there. Yeah, we're all going to have ad hoc stuff. We're going to have emergencies. But if I know that the organization is turning down brand spend because of some seasonality, I can see that in the metrics. I can look at it. Instead of getting the question later, I now have it in my calendar. I have it in my flight plan, as we like to call it, and you can see what's happening. You can actually pinpoint stuff. We use that too to track client releases. You put a client release in there. What did they do on what date? So you know it. Or if we know it in advance, we put it in there then. But sometimes you get surprised by these things. So that's all I've got. I would love to turn it over to Melissa. She's going to take you through some other detail and some other fun stuff.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you much.